Hey Janice,
Hey,
how are you?
I'm doing okay. Oops, I'm gonna take myself off a video because uh, I'm good, thanks.
Good. Yes, I thought about leaving my hat on because oh boy, it's a tundra out there. And is Lee, are you from South Africa, right? Is this the Lee that I met by email?
Yeah, it is. Can you hear me, Kim?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Sorry, I've also blocked my video because I'm just busy sitting in my hotel room in
Oh,
my bed, covered up.
not a problem. Boy,
So
you're
I can. Mm,
quite a visit for you, huh?
it is. It is. But let me actually now find this link here. Oh no, where is my picture? There we go. Yeah, it is. It's been quite a visit, quite a lot of traveling, and unfortunately, I think I brought the cold weather with, which I didn't think I was going to.
Do you have cold weather back home right now, or?
No, we're quite the opposite, to be honest.
Oh, I
We
thought.
are, yeah, it's very hot over there. So yeah, this is very new for me. This is probably the coldest I've ever been.
Well, it's definitely not our normal, but um, yeah. So, were you here for a week or?
Yes, I'm here for. I leave on Sunday, and I've just been kind of visiting different universities, visiting colleagues, some in Ann Arbor, and yeah. So yesterday I had a lovely day with Amy in the afternoon, so which was really great. So I think tomorrow we've got quite a few site visits that we're going on, but yeah, it's just to kind of get a sense of some of the programs that are going on here and what we can learn for our programs back in South Africa.
Oh, well, that's great. And I think I know I had some messages from people that wanted a recording, so it might just be us and um, Janice. Lee is, you might have guessed, she's from South Africa and was going to come out and kind of tour the farm today, but weather weather had other ideas. So I would, this would I usually do these things informally anyway, Lee, but
Hmm.
especially because we didn't get that chance for you to come out and talk in person. Um, you know, please, if to treat this as a conversation. If you have a question or just want to share something else, please feel free. And
Okay.
Janice, of
All right.
course, yes, I don't want to leave you out either. So,
Oh no, not at all. I think it's great. I mean, welcome. What a welcome to Michigan from South Africa. It's too bad that you couldn't get to the farm, but I'm born and raised here, and I might not have gone to the farm either today. So
Yeah. Hopefully there'll be a time at some stage.
yeah.
oh, that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, one of the things that I am becoming, I don't know if I really want to say obsessed with, but it definitely has become a very integral part of my practice is mindfulness. And I will say right off the bat that one of the things that I am horrible at is meditating. And, I always wish that I could meditate or get into that cool Zen state that I heard about. And um, years ago, I had a private therapy practice and I taught writing lessons on the side. It was before things became obvious that they could be combined and create this wonderful career for me because it combines, my passions. And so I had taken, it was actually one of my first online courses in mindfulness to help me, I thought, as a therapist. And It was, I think it was by Tara Brach, but it was Radical Acceptance, I believe was the name of the course. And as I was reading some stuff in the book that went with the online course, I came across this, it was a little snippet about somebody interviewing a pianist and asking him what made his music so beautiful. And his response was something along the lines of, it was in those rests where that beauty lies. And I was like, oh my gosh, because one of the reasons that I ended up where I am is I would look at the things that I was doing in my life, you know, especially with regards to self-growth work, and see how that went to my riding and my interaction with the horses. And I had always thought that I was joking years before, especially like in my undergrad when I started working for a horse trainer. I had thought I was joking when I said that whenever my riding lessons went well, the rest of my life was going well. Or that whenever the rest of my, you know, I had thought that, oh, I was just kind of being silly about this thing. But I found that to be so completely true the more that I went with it. And so when I heard this about, oh my gosh, so the beauty lies in the pause. And dressage was the discipline of riding that I was steeped in. And what it really made sense to me was with a half halt. When you give a horse this certain cue, what it's supposed to do is have them rebalance in their bodies and prepare to do something different. And so where my mind went at that time was, oh my gosh, well, if I don't listen for a response from my horse, then there's not going to be that beauty. There's not going to be the magic, because it's only a one-way conversation. And, you know, looking back on this too, not only was recognizing how much beauty was in that pause, but now, especially like with the how I'm involved with Oakland University and their program, being the equine welfare specialist, you know, there's such a burning desire within me to really help other practitioners understand how we can honor who the horse is, how the horse is, and draw that into our sessions. And the biggest thing to harness all of that beauty and power is by listening. And by seeing where the horse is and understanding their state somewhat, and then by what they tell us, because their way of communicating with us is body language. And that's the only way that they can really tell us what's going on. So if we tune into that, that allows them to really share their sentient nature with us. And the more that we tune into them, the more that it gets us into a state of mindfulness. And so it kind of, you know, was starting to weave this situation that, again, I wasn't even necessarily aware of way back then. But, you know, the horses definitely led me down the trail, because what I started to realize too, way back when, sorry, I'm feeding my dog pieces of carrots here because he tends to make bad choices if he's left to his own devices. So from there, I started to understand that maybe being in a mindful state, or being, I think in that time I was still thinking of more of meditating. Well, if I can't just sit here and go om and meditate, there's got to be some of the ways that I can, in my own style, get some of the benefits from this. And what I started to recognize was that when I was with my horses, I was probably the closest that I ever got to a state of meditation. And then I happened across these ideas like of a walking meditation or some other thing that put movement to it. And then I felt, okay, so maybe I can be a little more valid because somebody else put these things together. And recognizing that all of these elements of being with horses was pulling me into the present moment. And so I think about this time was when I combined my therapy practice and working with horses and moved to the barn. And so one of the things that I started doing was offering a workshop where we would comb the horses. And I had kind of fallen into discovering this quite by accident also. One of the things that I had always loved about being with my horses was grooming them. I groomed often for other people's at shows, and I had a very strong attachment to a curry comb, which, are you a horse person, Lee?
I was, so I kind of get some of the references, but I haven't ridden for years and years. So the curry comb, is that it's the kind of round, kind of flat one, isn't it? Well, flattish.
Yeah, it's got some teeth in it. It's designed
Yeah.
to get the dirt out of their coat and stimulate the pores where the hair follicles. And I really loved it because the more that you would curry your horse, the more you could lift the dirt out. You'd release the oils in the coat and it would get so shiny and soft. But I think there were some other things going on in there that I didn't really recognize at the time that had to do with self-regulation, being in the moment with my horse. But at one of the expos where I was speaking, there was another clinician who, he was actually a chemist, and he had created a line of grooming products. And he gave a demonstration on grooming, which I went to, and I was absorbing and inhaling all that I could. And he had this great idea that maybe we should not use our curry combs, because he talked about some horses being uncomfortable when you went against the grain of their hair for an extended long time. Because, you know, the curry comb you use in the circles like that. And, oh, that just rocked my world. And I really try to put my money where my mouth is and try new things and, you know, give these newfangled ideas a chance. So I tried it. And so I had, it was a big plastic comb that he had showed us. And so when I got home, I started to, you know, use that on my horses first, because another inspiration for me was I have a horse who didn't like to be groomed, you know, and it broke my heart because I love grooming and he didn't like to be groomed. And I thought, well, maybe that's some of his, you know, dislike. So the combing, it ended up, I think it did soothe some of the horses. But what I found on top of that I had no idea was coming was that when I used the curry comb, there was a little bit of like a chaotic energy with it. And when I took this comb and used it in the direction of the horse's hair coat, and it made me concentrate a little bit more, not even on purpose, but, you know, the lines on, or the teeth on the comb would leave lines in the horse's coat, and you could kind of hear the noise a little bit. I mean, you could hear the curry comb too, but it was different. And there was just a different feel when you went along the lines of how the horse's body flowed naturally. And on top of that, what I noticed was I don't think I really recognized how much of that chaotic energy I was bringing into the space with my horse until I used something that was much slower and a little softer energetically. And I recognized that without even trying, I was kind of breathing in rhythm with how I was using the comb. And just, I mean, I know that there are no coincidences, but it was like, oh my gosh, and I'm even in time with the horse here too. So kind of slowing down and opening up allowed for a much deeper connection with my horse, which I thought was really cool. And especially one of the areas of practice that I have, I work a lot with riders with fear issues, or people that own horses and have anxiety about being with them. And so I recognize that this was a great tool to help set them up for a more successful interaction with their horse. And I also, the people that were coming to me more for self-growth work, I think, gosh, so many of us deal with anxiety in some shape or form, whether it can be diagnosable or not. But just a nice way to be able to calm and focus. So I started doing mindfulness workshops with combing the horses. And then from there, I would notice too that when, and not even technically terming it a meditative state or mindful or anything, but just noticing that when we could, either as a facilitator or as someone working with the horse on our own, the more that we could tune in and focus on the present moment, the more that kind of opened up to be able to have more options of either interventions to do therapeutically or strategies when you're working with your horse to get them either to work better physically or to partner better with the owner. One of the things that I still do, but I did a lot when I was working for the trainer, was ride horses who were either unbalanced physically or lame, or they were a little bit unsettled mentally, and the spooky, shy, crazy. We would call them a lot the crazy horses. And I don't really think at the time that I was that aware, but being in the mindful state, because if I'm riding a horse and I'm trying to help him move better physically, all right, if I want him to move his hind legs evenly, then I really have to focus in and see where his body puts mine and what that tells me about what his legs are doing. And then the timing of an aid or use of my leg to help his leg come forward, it really opens up for a complete present experience. And noticing this, and then I had Reiki training because I had always been really intrigued with energy work and how those things happened. And being a person that you could describe as an empath, I thought that the emotions and the energy of the emotions had a lot to do with things. So I kind of wanted to play with that, investigate it a little bit. And I had a mini training in equine massage. And I was just starting to see and recognize that sometimes when I was around the horses, my Reiki would turn on, or I would be drawn to just kind of use some of the massage techniques on some random part in their body. It was, again, maybe I didn't put words to it yet, but a really beautiful thing that was happening for me was that the more that I spent time in that present moment, the more that my intuition and kind of that sixth sense of helping not only to read the horse, but working with clients in equine facilitated sessions, being able to kind of set something up to give them what they needed just in that intuitive basis. So then I started the Masterson, Jim Masterson method. He has this wonderful way of working with horses that helps capture some of the best parts of massage, chiropractic, acupuncture, and maybe even some other therapy that I don't remember. But it goes on the premise that when the horse is in a relaxed state and you apply a light pressure to their nervous system, they will release tensions. And this like captured so many things that I had these wonderings about and gave it a name and a framework. And so, excuse me, I started like, there's an introductory exercise that he has you do with all of the horses where you go down a meridian, and it's called the bladder meridian. All the other meridians release or kind of dump into this one. So if you bring it into balance, you're also bringing other meridians of the horse's body into balance too. And I started to also have my therapy clients interact in this way with the horses also, because it not only gets them into that mindful state, being able to focus in the present moment, and it got them into that calm emotional state. And the more time we spend in emotional state, the easier it is to get there. So that in itself was kind of what I thought I was basing my sessions on. But then I really started to recognize how much benefit the horses were getting from this. And not necessarily when I get them at first. I think most of my horses now are getting more used to being able to express themselves, to share their opinions, so to speak. And so explaining some of this to my therapy clients and what we're looking for and how it helps establish the mirror neurons, and how, you know, the communication, being that as humans, only 7% of our communication is actually verbal. If they can read a horse's body, they're developing the same neural pathways and constructs to be able to communicate better with humans. And of course, you know, what I had gotten about, oh my gosh, this opens up your intuition and all of these other things, it really helps you be able to keep yourself in a calmer space when dealing with some of life's upsets. And that was recognizing that in myself was why I decided to really start offering this, because you know, with the crew or my herd of horses, they have a lot of special concerns or physical ailments. Well, I don't know if I call it ailments, physical conditions and opinions. I guess I'm letting them all the opinion, but you know, the horse that really, I was always kind of an outlier, but Sunshine, or I call him my red horse, he was a horse that said, no, not really. He's the same one that didn't like grooming. And he also didn't like, now I know what he doesn't like. It's tolerating confusion. That makes him real insecure. And he is a horse, though, that doesn't act afraid. He acts more, I wouldn't really call it aggressive, but like one of the things that he would do if he started to be uncomfortable and didn't want to sign up anymore for what you were doing, he would jerk the lead rope out of your hand and run away. And so, you know, that's when you have a background more traditional in horses, that's a pretty ego-busting experience to have a horse that, you know, can just rip the lead rope out of your hands and run away. And I had called in a whole lot of experts to help me. Well, not a whole lot, maybe 4 or 5, but people that I wanted an opinion, because I had thought that I just needed better horse skills to remedy this situation or to make it better. what I didn't realize was what I needed was a new approach in philosophy. And this is definitely what he showed me. And ever since I got him when he was 2.5, and he always had this very odd reaction whenever I would stand any place from his shoulder back. It wasn't necessarily up by his head or neck, but when I moved back there, he would start not really wringing his tail, but giving it a very definitive type of swish. And I had I had all kinds of people telling me all kinds of things from, oh, well, maybe it was something passive that he did when he was nursing from his mom as a baby, to, well, he's flipping you off, or that type of thing, as well as ways to fix it. Well, you have to let him know he's boss, and or he's boss. Yeah, that's what I have to do.
He's boss, yeah.
he knows that. I have to, make sure he knows that I'm the boss, which, with this horse does not work. And, or to, if when I put my hand on him or put a saddle pad on him or something, he starts wringing his tail, I'm just supposed to keep doing that until he gives it up. And I think I tried that just with my hand a couple times, like petting him or tapping him, and I could still be there doing that. This was not going to just go away or be solved with a more traditional approach. And so fortunately, I never believed enough in what I was being told to push him really hard. And so, he was a horse that not only would he jerk the lead rope and run away, if I went out with a halter and lead rope to catch him, there was a 50% chance I could get him. Is it heads or tails? I don't know. Maybe I'll get him, maybe I won't. And so I really resolved to help things be different for him, because recognizing that this was happening for some reason, because he had an insecurity, or there's something that he wasn't feeling comfortable about. And so I kind of made it perfectly okay that I might not even ever ride this horse. I just had to meet him where he was, and I got really, really curious about what was going on. And in order to allow myself to get into that space of curiosity, which I think there was such an energetic component to it, every time that I interacted with him, I was really focused in the present moment. And what happened for he and I together was, I think it took a while for him to recognize that there wasn't going to be a demand. I could do this energy work on him, and he could start exhibiting those signs of release of tensions. He would lick and chew, he would yawn. And he started showing me all the other little things that horses do even before they get to those, now I call them bigger signs of release, but how he would blink his eyes, how the muscles would just kind of ripple like in his muzzle, or sometimes they would ripple on his sides, or it would look like in his, I don't know if this is the carotid artery, it would look like there would be a ripple there with his heartbeat. I mean, just all these really little subtle signs I started to watch just because I decided to take the time to be with him. And it made me really aware sometimes of what the horses are going through just by having our presence in their energetic field. And I decided that I really wanted to help other people be able to offer more of a, I like to call it like holding out that sacred place of possibility, or holding space for them. And after I I did this for a while, and even though I didn't quite know why I was doing it or where it would lead, I knew I just had to keep on, because what would happen was this horse that, 50-50 that I could catch him, he started, when he would see me, to come in the gate, even coming off the hay to come in, and I like to call it play together rather than work together. And he also started doing something that, again, before I might have framed it differently. If I go out, and sometimes he will come all the way in, sometimes he'll meet me halfway. He prefers that I do not put his halter and lead rope on until we get to the gate. It's like, I know where we're going. You don't have to insult me by putting that thing. Let's just go there together. And that's kind of the element that he's bringing into things now is, you know what, let's go together. And that, to me, is the stuff that all of this work with animals is about, whether it's just having an animal for our own pet, our, I don't know what you call it, our own satisfaction, or partnering with the animals to be able to offer something to other humans. But when we extend an invitation and they say yes, it's really, really hard to go back to making them do things or acting more. They will comply rather than cooperate. And so that is now turning into my mission, to be able to help more people understand that by figuring out and being with their horse in that present moment and honoring where they are, then we can extend invitations, and not only will they accept them, but sometimes they'll lead the dance to an even better place. And by spending this time in a mindful state, because, well, what I've really come to understand is mindfulness is more that gentle focus in the moment. But in the gentle focus, we can then move that if we have an intention. And when we invite the horse and we're holding that intention and focus, that allows them to step into that invitation. And it really, working with my horses this way, even if they interact with horses, even if they're interacting with people that aren't quite based in that, it helps them, meaning the human clients, to be able to experience that level of softness that they might not otherwise be able to access when they're stepping into their leadership. And the frosting on the cake is recognizing that interacting with horses this way has helped me be able to navigate through the turbulent waters or the chaos that can sometimes happen in life, because I've spent so much time purposefully being focused in the present moment. So I think that is one of the greatest gifts that we can work with, or that horses offer us when we really honor who they are. So that was kind of a whole big lot of words. Questions, comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what was I going to say? You know, for us in South Africa, so we've got a few organizations that are kind of practicing, because it's not exactly my realm, so I don't want to use the incorrect terminology because I know there's a lot more in it, but working with at-risk populations and kind of doing equine facilitated work. So, I mean, but I just found it very interesting from the psychology perspective in terms of kind of being in the moment and the process aspects that's happening and the shifts that are happening. So, I mean, I suppose for me, I'd be interested when you're working with your clients, are you doing a lot of one-on-one, or are you doing facilitating group kind of exchanges?
Both, actually. When I work with groups, I work with small groups. 8 is like the biggest. 4 or 6 is my favorite, because ideally what I like to do is to be able to give a little bit of education, orientation, because especially if someone hasn't been around horses a lot, it can be pretty intimidating. And I also feel very responsible to teach about safety. And I think there's a certain amount of, I guess I would call it etiquette, just how to be, and appropriate interactions. But and then too, when we offer a little bit of opportunity for people to either get themselves in the present moment and then share with the horse, or possibly to interact, to ask the horse to walk with them or something. I like to give a little bit of individual attention and then let them have a chance to try it on their own. Because I think, back when I was just teaching riding lessons, I would so encourage my students to experiment. Because some people in the horse world, well, in the rest of life too, but it's, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this. And then even in a riding lesson, there's a lot of almost micromanaging. Okay, well, use this trainer, use this. And not that that's necessarily wrong. I think there's a great time and a place for that. But in the therapeutic realm, more helping people be able to really develop new neural pathways of decision making, or brainstorming, or being able to shift gears when there's pressure. Having some time alone with I'm saying alone with the horse, but it's like, okay, well, I'm over in the arena with this other person, and you get the chance to try to do this right now, where there's still enough supervision to keep you safe, but you get the chance to, well, what if I do this? What happens there? And what if I put my body this way and act like I'm going that way? What do you do? And being able, I think, to evaluate what happened and make it their own evaluation of it, not somebody else saying, oh, that was great, or, ooh, don't do that again, to really own the experience. And of course I try to set up situations so that it's always building on a success. Because wherever the clients are, we can find that level of success, because that's the only way that we can progress, is when you build on a success. So I think I'm answering your question really long, but I do both. But even in group work, there's a considerable amount of individual attention.
Mm.
But then that same, because I think being in groups can be so powerful because of that level of community and acceptance and learning from each other. And especially there's such a level of openness that the horses draw from us, because a lot of it having to do with just their heart space, like the Heart Math Institute. I don't know if you've heard of that, but they draw us and calm us with their energetic, their heart rate, their respiration. And so there's this level of vulnerability, I think, that they help us step into without feeling completely exposed and unprotected.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. Oh, is that your dog?
Hi, Amy.
Oh. So Kim, because I think because my experience of working in a therapeutic space with horses has mainly been with groups, and so a lot of our organizations doing a lot of corporate team building, but then also process work within organizations, and we're actually wanting to arrange something with one of our organizations for our master students that are coming in for the clinical program, for them to go through that kind of alternate experience of seeing what can happen and then the different processes that are happening within that space there. I'm trying to think. I think maybe it's the late afternoon. My questions aren't forming very easily. Have you, in your experience, what would you say would maybe be some of the most kind of powerful moments that you've witnessed in that space with, I mean, obviously there's client confidentiality, but some of the biggest shifts that you've seen in the work that you've done?
Well, I think one of the most profound, and I will say too that I've seen something similar happen 3 or 4 times afterwards. I think 4. But oftentimes when I'm working with somebody, we will go out into the herd of horses.
Okay.
And sometimes we bring them in the arena or do something like that. But I went out, we went out into the herd of horses and we were talking and sharing. And this client was, had just kind of endured something where she felt completely unsupported. And as we were talking, she was emotional, she was crying, she was sharing the experience and how it felt. And we looked up and the horses had made a semicircle around us. And so, we kind of noticed that. And then one of my very best therapists ever, her name is Annie, and she came and walked up right behind my client and kind of bumped into her a little bit. And then, and it was the most gentle bump that I've ever seen. And it made, the client was off balance a little bit. And then Annie rocked back like this so that my client was completely supported by her. And so, we talked about that because that was, there was no way that I could have made that happen or set that up. That was just something that Annie offered because that's what she does. So I think that was, I'm trying to, I was working with a client that I sometimes will offer almost like a retreat experience in that, well, retreat's not right. I don't know exactly what to call it, but I will either by phone or in person kind of talk to the client first and get an idea of what's going on with them, what they're looking for. And then we have a horse experience. And so this client was looking for the right moment in the right way to tell her husband that she wanted a divorce. And she had a very, not overly, but she had a very big presence, a very strong way of being in her job and in some other areas, but not really in her family. And she was talking about how she didn't really want to be that leader in her family, but she knew that there were some pieces missing. You know, we kind of talked about that and put it in together. And so, being that she hadn't ever really met any of the horses before anything, when she came back to do the actual horse experience, I had thought that, you know, Annie, who I just told you about, she's usually my go-to girl because she's solid and she's one of the most nurturing horses I've ever met. And so I was thinking, all right, well, we'll go out to the field and get Annie and bring it.
I'm saying she would step forward to
Yes.
kind of be there, be present.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's exactly what she does. And so that's kind of what I thought would happen. We went out to the field, and Annie's turned out now with 2 other mares. I like to call them, in their collective little herd, the 3 wise women. And so we went out to do this, and there was another, one of the other mares, her name is Missy. And Missy also has a very strong presence. And if she doesn't feel secure, she gets pushy, bossy, you know, can be very intimidating. And so she is not a horse that I would, oh, so we've never done anything together. I don't know what level of horse skill you have. Oh, I think I'll pull in Missy. You know, that just wasn't on my radar. However, we went out there, and politely and respectfully, Missy kept kind of herding us, not hurting, but herding like a border collie, herding us away from Annie. And I have learned, because I could tell other stories, that when the horses are trying to point something out to me or volunteer, I should listen. And so I said, okay, we'll do this, and put the halter on. And one of those things that I think my intuition helped me, again, from, you know, spending so much time hanging out with the horses. Jokingly, I like to refer to it as watching paint dry, because sometimes it's very undramatic. But I gave this client the lead rope, and she was able, as I shut the gates and we walked in together, Missy made it into the session and showed her, because we set up like some small goals. Okay, so lead her through these cones and over here. And it really gave this client the opportunity to be able to step into what I like to call the gentle strength of her leadership. But what an even more significant thing that I saw that that really kind of helped me anchor into wanting to help other facilitators adopt and embrace this was just by a slight rise of her head, I think raise, Missy let me know that she was offering this to the client because I was standing there supporting her. Because when, you know, oftentimes in the arena, I'll kind of walk at all different angles because you can see different things with a different viewpoint. And so when I started to back away to kind of get a broader view, that's when Missy's head was up. I was like, oh. And then when I stepped back in, her head was down and she was connected with the client again. So that was a pretty fascinating thing to me, to be able to witness that subtle shift from the horse saying, you know, when she was comfortable and when she wasn't.
Sure. So with when you're doing this, Kim, it's normally you are facilitating it in addition to the horses. You don't have a second person with you, you know, picking up content and process. It's you're there taking it all in that moment.
Yes. I have had some of the trainings and the modalities where they have two practitioners, and I have worked that way. And I was very fortunate. A very good friend of mine, she and I paired together. But I have found that because of, being a certified professional, or no, LPC, licensed professional, sorry, sometimes the words, being a therapist, and also having 30 some years, 35, 30 something years course experience, it does combine in a way that I can kind of help both of those areas come together. Now, sometimes that isn't to say, though, that I don't have support and help, because I have a very wonderful small group of people that I don't really want to say trained, but I've helped them be able to understand what the expectations are and how we interact with the horses, and how to help keep the human clients comfortable and safe. So when I do workshops, I have people there if needed and necessary, because I think, you can't have too much help.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, it's there's so much that's happening, I suppose, in those moments. And I think too, because you have that connection with the horses, that you can pick up on all those nuances, that you can bring those skills into bear to kind of know that, okay, this is, as you're describing them with their personalities. But I suppose it's, like the complexity that they have with their own personalities. And as you say, when you're setting it up, it's very much their own cooperation, because if they don't want to cooperate, then they go off for the day. If they can't speak to that client, if they don't feel that that's their place, they'll just move away from the herd. They'll just step out of the space.
Mm-hmm. And because of so much time watching for those subtle signals, like when the horse's head comes up, or even just that tilt away, I think it's very, very possible to see whether they're willing to engage or not without them even having to completely vacate.
Okay.
And that's, I think, something that it could be a little less common, because I know there's other people doing things like that too, but often in the modalities where there's two people, there's exercises set up.
Yeah.
And yes, the horses get to choose. And we work a little more with actual interaction with the horse. I mean, sometimes, like, we call it the goal box, because we'll set up that little place, and a difference being, one of the methods, you weren't allowed to touch the horse, and if it was a group, you couldn't touch. And what I found is, and I understand therapeutically, when you bring people to a place of frustration, things come out. But my approach as a therapist too is also more, it's very non-confrontational. I'd rather go from, okay, where's this, like with the horses, where's this place where you feel secure and comfortable, and let's grow that bigger, rather than frustrating people to the point where they have an emotional catharsis, and they break through. But not my way with people, but the energy that offers the horses. I didn't want to to have them be around that frustration a lot, because one of the horses that I had at the time when I was giving this a try, he was really susceptible to people with frustration. Well, he would, he wanted nothing to do with it, and it would cause him to be agitated. And I also, if, again, on the basis of building trust and partnership, because that's so much what life is about. And so if I can, because believe you me, if you've got a halter on a horse, especially one of mine with a stronger personality, and you're just going to demand that it go into this box, no, it's not going to happen. But at the same time, like, I would liken it to, like, if I was going to China, I wouldn't expect that everybody there spoke English and, adopted my comfort level of body the space issues. I know they have different, the cultural things. I would try to understand the culture in which I was going, maybe learn a few phrases like, where's the bathroom? Where's lunch? And so being able, I think, because there is some education about horses that I employ also, so that we can, again, set up for success in that harmony and partnership of working together. So, again, it will be a little bit different because we're focused on working together, not just kind of seeing what gets mirrored back. Which, again, nothing wrong with that, because of who I am and the experience that I have. I love combining those two things together, because that element of synchronicity, and I guess I keep saying it over and over again, but the real partnership and being able to express your invitations and requests in a manner that's honored by this 1,000-pound animal is pretty cool.
Because I think, it sounds to me, where I'm most concerned about, because it's not that I would say, like, the equine assisted activities and therapies are probably in our country, out of all the animal assisted activities, are probably the most developed compared to working with or having collaborations with other animals, dogs, cats. That's still growing. But horses, there's been a lot bigger investment and kind of scholarship and understanding that's come from different countries. So I'll never put myself there and say that I know very much about that. But as a whole, there's a lot. It's a much bigger investment in our country in that area. So it's a little bit more organized than other fields. But I think it's, what we've observed. We had a conference last year, and it was around animal assisted interventions, and individuals, there was someone who came and did a presentation about their practice, and it was just quite disturbing images about working with a client who was, like you were describing now, about the kind of the chaos or the aggression, and that's part of what they're managing, and that was manifesting in the relationship with the horse, that the horse wouldn't go where they wanted them to go. And so it was a very kind of practical, skills-based activity. You're given a task, complete the task, and how you process and handle the task, working with the horse, making reflections around that. And I suppose we just kind of thinking about the bigger dynamics that a horse, it's a prey animal, and they're powerful, so their level of consent is a lot stronger than other animals. So we were comparing it to some of the other conversations about people doing work with guinea pigs and people doing work with smaller creatures and their levels of consent and that. But it sounds like even more so your work is that's even more forefronted or foregrounded than some of the other practitioners I'm thinking about, who would put the horse in a situation where they've got the halter, they've got the lead rope, that's already set up. Whereas it sounds like in the work you're doing, that's not even imposed from the beginning. It's kind of, it evolves and it has a life of its own to lead it to that point, for the horse to kind of cooperate and want that to be set up, if I'm making sense.
I think so. And I mean, there could be a time where I bring the horse in haltered, but more often than not, because how we even offer the halter to the horse, you know, because our horses don't live in stalls, they're turned out, because it's pretty easy to halter a horse in a stall and think that everything is just fine. I mean, not saying it's not fine, but saying that you're getting all green lights. And so, you know, when I, like what my red horse taught me, if I would go to offer the halter to him and he would, you know, start to kind of move away, I found that if I would back off and sometimes give him time, because you know, like one of the things about me is, especially if I've, you know, played with my horse and it's gone really well and I turn them out, and then I'm already excited for the very next time that I get to come in and you know, play with them again. And so, you know, the next day I'm out there and all right, I'm ready. And I go up to the horse and he's like, I'm eating my breakfast. What are you thinking? And again, you know, I think what they can really help teach us too is not to take things personally and to recognize, well, wait a minute, why is my agenda his?
Yeah.
So when he would move away, if I would give him some space or time and possibly, well, most likely ask again, and, you know, maybe a second asking, maybe a third, but, you know, also recognizing, well, if you have to go in to see the veterinarian or get your feet done or whatever, you can't always just say no. You know, there's kind of that balance. And so working within that myself, okay, so is it just time you need, or do you need me to approach from a different area? And again, I think, you know, that level of observation and creativity, because if I take a client out and we do that, and you can tell if the horse is saying absolutely not, or maybe just not yet. And again, to read those signals and then to be able to extend an invitation that's appealing to the horse, you know, there's a lot into that. But if I don't do corporate work, because, you know, that's a lot of people to manage in one thing. So probably, you know, a different type of modality and setup is very much more conducive to that situation. Because if I had a corporate group, I'd be like, all right, so we'll all talk about stuff and then we'll break into small groups and do this kind of thing. Because really, I mean, corporate people stepping into vulnerability in general is not what they're going to do with the workplace at all. But how can I get in touch with my creativity and be able to, you know, hold a better boundary so that I don't, you know, pick up on somebody else's negativity or take things too personally. I think there could be a lot of lessons learned there. I just would have them come in small groups.
So I don't know if anyone else, I feel like I'm asking all the questions, like a one-on-one.
Well, right here, and I know Amy and Janice pretty well. And was it just yesterday we met, ladies? Yeah, it was. So I'll speak on their behalf, because I know that they could just leave the conference too if they weren't interested. But I'm guessing that they're probably finding the conversation pretty interesting too.
It's it's wonderful to kind of hear how it evolves in different places. I mean, I would have loved to have seen the farm and met met yourself in person, and also the horses. How many horses are there?
Well, let me see. I myself own, we just had a new addition come in Sunday, which has been kind of interesting to manage in this weather.
Yeah.
But I have 5 now. Liz has 6.
Wow.
There's 13 altogether.
13. Wow.
Some of the horses that I don't actually own, I get the privilege and honor of incorporating into the program. But 5 are.
Okay. Wow, sure. And so how are they managing today?
Well, they do have access to being indoor. The riding arena, we opened up and we actually put a big round bale of hay in there. They still have all their normal shelters with hay and water. The new horse has to be a blanket. She's got a muscular condition, so she has to be warm. And then I have one of my thoroughbreds doesn't grow much of a coat at all, so she wears a blanket. But everybody else is kind of looking at us like we got some problems. What's wrong with you? The sun's out.
Yeah, I did see the sun earlier, and I thought that is crazy. Haven't stepped outside today at all. So at the moment, then, yourself, Kim, do you write up your experiences? Is there a lot of with your clinical work? Is there a lot of scholarship or opportunity to write about it in different platforms or document the work that you're doing and the changes, the shifts that happen?
Well, I'm kind of working on, you mean sharing it out type of thing, or I thought, yeah, you didn't mean note taking. I really am working more on that. It took a little while for it to kind of make sense and all come together, and I really think like this component of mindfulness and being involved with Oakland University as their equine welfare specialist really, it's like, all right, well, if you're going to hire me to do this, I'm going to take it really seriously. And it kept growing. And for a little while, because it isn't mainstream in the equine therapy world, I wasn't really, because I don't want to say, well, you're not doing it right or you're not doing this. But if you incorporate a little bit of this, offering the horse a choice, it makes a bigger difference. So that's kind of like doing things like this is my attempts to start having more opportunities to write and share. I present at horse expos, and I write for just a local publication. But I'm trying to have more of an online presence too.
Okay, great. So the combination of mindfulness with the practice, it isn't then a common thing. It's not, it really is an emerging area.
Yes.
Okay.
So what is your area of specialty?
So I'm a clinical psychologist by profession, and then we don't specifically have any additional qualification or any universities that offer training in animal-assisted activities, animal-assisted therapies, interventions. There's nothing that's formalized in our country. So, anyone who's interested in it is kind of taking on opportunities, doing training overseas where they can, or there's a handful of individuals who kind of are involved in running workshops within South Africa, based on their own research. So they've come through academia, or they've worked in universities, but they're either social work, psychology, OT, those are our main streams. A little bit of nursing. There's an interest, but not really anyone specifically from there. So it's kind of developing it as a field. So for me, my background specifically, I actually worked with young boys diagnosed with ADHD. So I'm interested in. So my background was really around young people's understandings of their experiences and their diagnoses and constructions around also gender, young boys and diagnoses. But my practitioner side, as well as being, I'm involved with an organization called Pets Therapy. So we do the therapeutic visits to residential facilities, and we've got a learn to read program which is linked to that, which is the pairing the volunteer dog with the learner in the school for their own educational support. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. But I've got a few organizations like Equinox, which is one of our groups that does our EAP practice there, very in the Western Cape where I live. But we're finding that a lot of these organizations, they are just to get the evidence and support for what they're doing, for funding purposes, to validate the work, because a lot of them are NPOs and not private organizations. So we just, trying to think about ways in which we can help them evaluate their programs, generate research, get that out there so that it can, and not to necessarily regulate, but just to have some guidelines of practice around what's happening, because it's still very anecdotal, and there's a lot of people who are branching into doing, not specifically working with horses, because horses, as I said, is quite, people who go into that are a lot more focused. It's mainly the EAP model with the two practitioners, your mental health specialist and your equine specialist. So that is more organized. But the people branching into working with dogs and cats and hedgehogs and every other creature, it's the novelty of it at the moment. So we're riding that wave, and we of people using animals, how they use them in therapy. So we're dealing with the same issues that I think the States have. I mean, I'm sure it's still stuff here, but you guys have already ridden that wave. You're a lot more further down the line. We're really at the starting point of those conversations and what we're doing to try and assist. So for me, it's a lot around, where's the animal's place in this, and understanding it from that perspective. But I'll be honest, from the equine assisted intervention perspective, I don't have much knowledge. Even when I used to ride, I love being with horses, but not necessarily riding horses, and that's a very difficult thing to communicate to people. So I think that's why I dropped off that channel, because I wasn't competitive, and it didn't speak to me to have that sort of relationship with a horse. But I enjoy being with them. So I think that's, if you're riding in South Africa, you're a competitor. That's the narrative that's there. There's very little relationship with a horse except for being functional. That's kind of where we come from. So I feel like I haven't been with horses in ages.
Well, it's too bad this is the weather we got, because I'd love to have you come out and.
I know. I would have loved to. Honestly, they evoke. I get the sense, not that, as I said, not that I've done training even in that perspective, but they do evoke a lot of material. I find that when you're there, they, and I can see my blind spots and things that come up exactly how I can read myself through the horses, knowing that, okay, this is my need to be accepted, or like, I want you to come to me, but I don't want to put pressure on you. And so it's a wonderful space. Maybe it activates a bit too much content. Maybe that's why I haven't gone into that arena. Excuse the pun.
It's a perfect pun.
Yeah. But I mean, it's wonderful to see, because I think I've now followed on Facebook. I'm just bringing up my screen. yeah, because I did follow today, I think, or yesterday, with because you've got quite an active Facebook link.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Oh,
I followed that now. So I saw a few. I saw some posts earlier. Yeah. So you're only starting activities again on the weekend, or
because of the
with clients.
weather, or
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, probably because they've already called school. They actually called school last night for today and tomorrow, and we have an 11-year-old daughter, so it just makes everything different. But yeah, the weekend should be much better temperatures, and we'll get back to actual work then.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you so much. I mean, it's wonderful to hear, and I'm definitely going to follow. So you're on Facebook, and then will I find a website
My
and
confidencethroughconnection.com. I think you might be able to access it from the Facebook page, but send me a friend request
okay.
on Facebook too.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Definitely do that. Yeah. No, that's great. Now, so the organization that the Equinox, the one that we're working with, they do a lot of groups. So they do corporate things, but they work a lot with young girls. That's kind of their bracket. They do a lot of personal journey work with, I would say, early adolescent, late adolescent groups as well. And I know they're very interested in finding out what's going on around the world and different modalities as well, because I think we kind of aware of mindfulness, but how to integrate it and have that kind of theoretical base or a more kind of practical structure of linking it to what's actually happening is really useful. So I'm definitely gonna try and connect the dots and tell them to try to also follow and
Thank you.
start a conversation there, because they're really wonderful people as well. I haven't spent a lot of time with them, but I met them at that conference, and out of all the different organizations, they just have the right perspective about what happens in that space, and the respect for the animals. So I did resonate a lot with them around how they approach the work that they do.
Yay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I really enjoyed meeting with you, and I don't know, Amy or Janice, do you have anything to comment or questions or anything?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
How can we have the name of the organization that she's speaking about? That sounds very interesting.
Oh, it's is that Janet? Janet, the name of the organization, it's Equinox.
Okay.
So it's EQUINOX.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. That would be cool to check that out.
Yeah.
Maybe if I do this, you'll see me. Allow.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey,
Okay.
there she is.
And sideways. Yep. Can you see me now?
Yep.
And
Yep.
It's dark. Hi. Okay. Yeah, I'm always interested in what other countries have available. I've been fascinated with animal-assisted interventions for a long time. I was a social work student, MSW, and tried to get my department involved in animal-assisted interventions. They didn't want to do it, though, which was frustrating at MSU, Michigan State University. But I did start a group at MSU of students that are really interested in it. Gosh, that was back in 2013, and I've since graduated, but they're still going, and they still have students that are very interested in this. So it'll be neat to see what Equinox has and kind of look at what other countries have available.
Yeah, I mean, they so I can't think of any others. I mean, those are the ones that are in the forefront of my mind for doing that. But we've got, so our organization, Pets as Therapy, we've got a similar one called Top Dogs, and they do, one of the areas they've done really well in is, because we, you know, in South Africa, there is a lot of crime and trauma. And in terms of working with children who've undergone really horrific situations in terms of sexual abuse and other forms of trauma, they actually have a program. It's with kind of with the correctional services, where they assist and they take the young children through the kind of the legal system. So I'm sure there are other programs, equivalent ones in the States. So they've done really well with that, where they do the mock courts, and they have the dogs are there as kind of for support, but then they also take on roles within the court. So it might be like the defense or the prosecution, and they walk the children through that in a very supportive sense, so that when they actually go through to the real scenario, they've now been prepped, they know what to expect, and they've they're comforted through that process. So that's their, aside from doing the other residential, that's one of their things that they're known for, that they work with our child services to support to support young children. So so there's a lot that's growing.
We have dogs are becoming a big thing here in the States of helping people too. I know that's not with the equine assisted stuff, but we're starting to have dogs go with people in courtrooms to help them when they testify. And I'm training service dogs for sexual assault survivors. Things like that. But it's interesting you mentioned about like even smaller pets are being used, like hedgehogs and things. Can you tell me more about that?
It's so we don't have any specific, like when I was chatting to Amy yesterday, we don't have any bodies that specifically regulate or check or provide certification. We don't have that at all in our country. So the only service animals that come through are, we have our Guide Dogs Association, and we have our, who do in terms of visually impaired, and then also they do autism support dogs. They're the only ones who really manage that, and especially for autism support dogs, it's a huge waiting list. And then there's a few individual practitioners who've now just taken it up to work with guinea pigs. Especially guinea pigs are very popular in terms of their behavior. Hamsters, like bearded dragon, lizards. It's very, it's just pockets of individuals who are doing this, but who have an interest in that particular animal, and so they claim to know the signs of stress, or that's the claims that are being made, but we have no specific evaluation or processes. These are people operating completely independently. So the conference I was at recently, the one individual, she was talking about how they work with hamsters, or I can't even remember if she said used hamsters, but and she was working with at-risk youth, and there were some horrific stories about things that have happened to the hamsters just from a moment or a lapse of concentration. I mean, a hamster's tiny, it gets squished, and so it's quite the whole thing is quite distressing. But to answer your question, there's a lot of different creatures that are being now brought in, but more for the novelty than there being any specific evidence to say that you working with a hamster, could you not achieve the same thing with a fluffy toy? What is the actual, like in actual fact, how much of a benefit is that? Whereas like EAP and equine assisted work, there's been a lot more evidence, and we've got an organization called SADA, which is the South African I don't get the wrong, Riding Disabilities Association, South African Riding for Disabilities Association, something like that. And they're one of our most well-established with working with different populations. But therapeutic horse riding, whether it be cerebral palsy or a lot of physical disabilities. So they've had a lot of research or a lot of work's gone into the value of that physiologically. And then the growing area around emotional different diagnoses. But our smaller animals, there's more red flags than than I would say possibly pros. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to see
Turn the
you.
light on. Yay. Can you see me now?
Much better, yeah.
Sorry. It's been a good talk. Thank you, guys.
Sure. So, Janice, were you going to say something? I know you had unmuted.
Oh, I was just going to say I've enjoyed listening. Hi, Janice. Hello. Hi, Amy. Good seeing you.
Miss you.
Aw, you too.
Oh, so this was because I was confused because it's a different Amy. I was thinking of Amy that I was speaking to yesterday.
Nah, different Amy.
Different Amy. That's how I'm saying Amy. Well, nice to meet you all.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you for doing this anyway, even though we didn't get to meet personally. And oh, well, Janice and Amy's always good to see you.
Thank you.
All right, and well, of course, Amy and Janice too, but Lee, other questions, friends on Facebook, and it would be great to keep in touch.
Definitely. Thank you so much for making the time.
Sure.
Oh, you're very welcome. Have a safe trip, and you two girls keep warm.
Thanks. You too.
Okay. Warm wishes, everybody. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.